Okay, welcome to the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abridged code of Jewish law. We're doing chapter 122, and we're up to number 9. Sorry, number 10. We just finished off number 9 last lesson. Number 10. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is, as we only have another week, and there's technically 2 more chapters to do before Tisha B'Av. So rather than read it all inside word for word, we're going to do a little bit of a summary, and we'll go from there. And that way, at least we'll be prepared for Tisha B'Av. Okay. So, hello to those who just joined us. So we're just saying that someone else just joining us, let them in. We're just saying that we still have the rest of this chapter and 2 more chapters before Tisha B'Av, but there's only this and next lesson. So we're going to do, rather than read everything inside, we're going to do a little bit of a summary. So chapter 122, number 9, and we're going to say that during the 9 days, so from Rosh Chodesh Av, so Rosh Chodesh is tomorrow, well actually tonight, technically. So from Rosh Chodesh Av until after Tisha B'Av, we don't get any new clothes made. Right, so today most of us are not really ordering custom clothes, you know, we buy off the shelf. But not that long ago, you bought your fabric and you took it to someone and they measured you up and they made you clothes, and then you found out that in the 2 months it took them to make it, you went up a size and a half, and you know, and that it doesn't fit anymore, and that's how life worked. But we can't get clothes made during these 9 days, even with a non-Jewish tailor, except, right? I know this surprises you, but we have an exception. Let's say someone is getting married right after the 9 days. So, or some other need like that. In other words, it's not a regular need, but here it's going to be the wedding, and the bride and groom want to look very A1, so they're allowed to get clothes made with a non-Jewish clothes maker, a tailor, seamstress. And if it's before the 9 days, which means you've got to hurry up because tonight the 9 days begin, you can even have it made by a Jewish tailor. Okay, so that brings us to number 11. Now it says that the women have a custom not to arrange threads for weaving. Now, I'm not sure how many people weave their own cloth at home anymore. Any hands up? Anyone weave their own cloths? No? Okay. But the reason is that the cross, you know, sort of goes one way, another way. It's called a Shesin Eidov. Just by the way, some people use that as a nickname for the Christian cross, you know, so sometimes you hear this term, Shesin Eidov, you know, as like an idol, and you normally think it applies to weaving, and you're wondering what's going on. But since it sort of, you know, goes across that lengthways and widthways, that's why it's used as slang sometimes. And the reason that the people were accustomed not to attach the threads to the weaving, to the loom, is because it's called the cross, you know, the cross, which is, you know, it's called the warp, right? The warp is the cross one, right? So the warp, it's called the Shesi, and it sounds like the Evan Shesia, right? Which is the foundation stone of the Beis Hamikdash. This was destroyed. So in commemoration of this destruction, so we don't load our looms. Okay. Yud base number 12. All right. Now we're going to have to give a preface to this. One of the things we can't do during the 9 days is wash. Now that doesn't mean that people don't wash it all for 9 days. And if you decide to be very strict and not wash it all for 9 days, let's stay on Zoom. And we'll have our meeting in person after the 9 days are finished, right? So what it means is that we can't wash for pleasure. So what can we wash? We can wash our face, hands, and feet. Now, hands includes armpits. It's just a polite way of putting it. And feet includes the groin and etc., all those areas. And as we're going to see, you can face even means you can wash your hair. So essentially, you can wash everything. So what does it mean you can't wash? So there's a few things here. Number one, as if we would learn it word for word, we'd start off number 12. That essentially means you can't take a bath. Okay, they didn't have showers in those days. In other words, you can't wash the entire body at once. So you can wash the body, each part of the body, but not at once. We'll come back to that in a minute. That's one thing. Number two is we don't wash pleasure. And I'll give an example. You know, even if we're very sweaty and we need a good wash, technically, to get in the shower and just wash yourself, if you were in a big rush, there was an emergency, you had to go somewhere, you know, you could probably do it, I don't know, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, you know, everyone's different, but whatever it is. Yet most of us tend to take 20 minutes or half an hour in the shower, you know, different things. Well, I say most of us, many of us. Why? Because people enjoy the nice hot shower and the steam and the, you know, and the various things. So there's some difference between actually washing dirt off yourself, which being sweaty is also considered dirt, and enjoying, you know, having a nice shower. Okay, and so we can't wash for pleasure. We can wash if we're dirty, as I said, which includes being all sweaty. You know, so in Australia, where these 9 days are in winter, it's you know, if maybe you skip a day or two for a shower, it's not the end of the world. In summer, in Phoenix, Florida, you know, it's even humid, even though it's not as hot. I'm sure some other places where people are, you know, you get pretty sweaty pretty quickly. So one might need to wash, you know, every day. So practically, how would you do it then? We would, so if we use a shower as an example, since we're not washing our whole body at once, again, that's considered sort of washing for pleasure. Yeah, as you know, you sit in a nice bath. It's like, you know, it's not only washing, it's relaxing, you know, and unless the bath at my house where I don't fit, in which case it's not very relaxing, but you know, whatever it is. But so let's say a person will stand in the shower, but outside the water, right? Then they might shampoo their hair, and then you stick your head under and you wash your hair. You know, then you wash your face, put soap on your face, and then you know, wash the water off your face, and then the armpits, you know, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. So you wash a part of the body at a time where that needs washing, but you're not having that standing under the nice hot shower and you know, the shower experience. You know, I know we take it for granted nowadays. It's not necessarily looked at as a luxury, but to a certain extent it is. Also, we shouldn't have a piping hot shower. Okay? You don't have to have freezing cold. You know, you can put enough, look, if you can handle it, better to have the cold shower. But you can put enough hot water in it, you know, take the bite out of the cold, but not that nice steamy, you the shower, right? That's what we avoid. Susan, do you have a question?
Yes, and what about the mikveh is not allowed either?
So we'll talk about mikveh next.
Okay.
Let's just
Sorry.
some actual washing. So washing where we're dirty. So dirty can be you did gardening and you got mud on you. That can be dirt. Dirty can be, you got or sweaty. It can be whatever it is. So when you actually need a wash, you can wash, but not like sitting in the bath or that steamy hot shower that getting under the water once. Not the relaxing experience. We're not washing for pleasure. We're just washing for need. That's right. Similarly, the swimming pool. I think if you're a Olympic athlete or something and you're training, any Olympic athletes on the class? And so if you're training, then it's actually probably not too fun. But again, to hot day, you get in the pool and it's like these are the things that we don't do during the 9 days. But to wash for a need, we're allowed to wash, as we said. The expression in Shulchan Aruch is to wash our hands, feet, and face. As we said, the face includes the hair, the hands include the armpits, and the feet include the groin, etc. All the areas. So, but a bit of a time. That's how we wash. Okay. Now, mikveh. A lady who's going to the mikveh, she can go as usual, and she can do all the washing she needs to do beforehand as usual. No problems. A man, if he normally says a man who goes to mikveh every single day, so he can also go during the 9 days, not Tisha B'Av itself. But if he goes sometimes, sometimes yes, sometimes no, if he has time, well, then he shouldn't go. But maybe he goes every Friday before Shabbos. So if he goes every Friday, then he can go this Friday also during the 9 days. But if, sometimes he misses, and then he gives it a miss. Right, so any washing that's necessary, if you have surgeons washing their hands before surgery, but don't say, oh, it's a 9 days, you can't wash your hands, right? It's, whatever they need to do, even though they're not dirty yet, technically. He's washing them to, the various things. No, it's any washing that's not for enjoyment, for pleasure, is allowed. Any washing that's for necessity or has a strong reason, little children, maybe a baby, a young has to wash maybe in a few times a day, whatever it is. So it's the washing for enjoyment that we can't do. Washing that's for need, we can, but we do it in a way that doesn't become enjoyment. Like I said, we don't sit in that nice hot bath and wash ourselves off. Okay. Any questions on that? No? All right. Okay. Then are you talking to me? Because if you are, you're on mute. If you're talking to someone else, then that's fine.
Are we on Kuf Chaf Bet?
Yes. Yep, up to Yud Gimel, number 13.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rosh Chodesh Av.
Yep, so Rosh Chodesh Av, it falls out on Friday. So someone who normally, now we're even talking about taking a bath or a proper shower. They normally does that in hot water every Erev Shabbos. So today we pretty much do that almost every day. But in those days, it was a hassle to make, but you had to boil the water, extract the water from the well. You had to boil it. At least Erev Shabbos, people had a good bath. So during the 9 days, on Erev Shabbos, someone who always has a proper wash on Friday in honor of Shabbos, they can even do this during the 9 days. So this is even the bath or the shower properly, right? Never mind the weekdays. So they can do that. However, if there's a second Shabbos in the 9 days, which is going to happen this year, right? The one right before Tisha B'Av. Then we don't have the bath, right? We go back to doing what we do during the weekdays of the hands, the face, the feet, with areas that include. In other words, we wash one part of ourselves at a time, if necessary. We can shampoo our hair, but it says not to use boreas or me'afra. These are things like the equivalent of what we use conditioner today. So in other words, to clean the hair, you can clean the hair for Shabbos, but that extra, sort of buff, we don't do on this. So this will be not this Shabbos, the one after, right? The one right before Tisha B'Av. Right, and as we said, someone who goes to mikveh every Friday before Shabbos, they can even go this one. All right. 14. So we should never know from these things of mourning, but we know, for example, a mourner doesn't cut their hair for 30 days. Right, during the shloshim, the 30 days after, so if they're mourning for a close relative, they don't cut their hair for 30 days. And if it's a parent, even after the 30 days, they still don't cut their hair until people tell them, you're looking scraggy. You're looking straggly, so it could even be longer. But this mourner, God forbid, we should never know from such things. They didn't cut their hair for 30 days. The 30 days finish during these 3 weeks where you can't get your hair cut. So what happens now? So that person can get their hair cut until the last 9 days, which is tonight. But in the 9 days onwards, we say, wait, you can wait another up to 9 days. Okay. 15, there's a bris. So we should all have many simchas, many happy occasions, and only happy occasions. The child's born, and the bris is going to be during the 9 days. So obviously the child will allowed to wash and all these things before the bris, after whatever they need to do. That's a medical, we're not even talking about that. But normally at the bris, the moil, the one who performs the bris, the sandik, the person who holds the child, it's a great honor, the parents. So normally they'll obviously wash, they'll have put on fancy clothes, they get haircuts, all these different things. So what happens, what do they do in this circumstances? Let's see what they can do. So they are allowed to wear Shabbos clothes. So during the 9 days, we don't wear fancy clothes. On Shabbos we do. On the Shabbos during the 9 days, because Shabbos, even a real mourner, God forbid, we should never know from such things. Even a real mourner does not observe any public signs of mourning on Shabbos. So for sure that we just have a custom of mourning during these 9 days. On Shabbos, we wear Shabbos clothes. But during the week, we don't wear fancy clothes. Obviously we wear regular clothes and perhaps, if you go to work, you have to wear a suit or something, you're allowed to wear a suit and tie. But you don't put on your best fancy Shabbos clothes during the 9 days. But for the bris, you're allowed to. So that's the moil, that's the sandik, the one who holds the child, and the parents. Okay. However, the kfata, the couple who brings the child in, they don't wear Shabbos clothes. Also, these people can have their haircut before Shabbos Chazoin, before the Shabbos, before Tisha B'Av, which can, that can sometimes be 1 day before Tisha B'Av, like it is this year. It can be, 5-6 days before Tisha B'Av. Now, it depends on what day of the week Tisha B'Av falls out on. So until the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av, they can even get a haircut during the 9 days. Okay. Um, "16 is just re-mentioning different laws that we said before. 17, on Shabbos Chazoin, that's the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av. So not this Shabbos, next Shabbos. We read a special haftarah, and there's a custom to call the rabbi or someone who knows in Hasidic circles you don't see it so much, but in other Ashkenazic circles they read it to a like a mournful tune, not the regular haftarah tune. So so someone gets called up for that. So that's the 9 days. Now we're going to chapter 123, the laws of the Erev Tisha B'Av, the day before Tisha B'Av. Now this year it's going to be different. Yes, David.
Yeah, I know we didn't get there. Yet, but regarding the mournful tunes that we use on, like,
Yes.
for instance, on Tisha B'Av. So
Tisha B'Av itself.
So why do those mournful tunes sound like the tune that we sing on the Megillah on Purim? They sound very similar.
It's not the same as the Megillah. There are some psukim in the Megillah that speak about when the Jews got taken into exile, and the different communities have different custom of how many verses of the Megillah they use the Tisha B'Av tune. So pretty much everyone, when it says that, Mordechai was one of the Jews, when they took the king and they took them off into captivity, into Bavel, so people use the tune of mourning of the Eicha, of the Tisha B'Av tune for those pasukim. And there's a few other pasukim dependent on 2 other verses, depending on, from community to community. But so it's not that the mournful ones sound like the Purim. It's on Purim, for some of the sad things, we take the mournful one of Tisha B'Av. Yeah.
I thought it was the whole Megillah sounded like that.
You think the whole Megillah sounds like?
Yeah.
Well,
it's a very different tune.
If where you go to shul, the person reading the Megillah's Esther, it sounds the same as Megillah's Eicha, then I don't know. I don't want to say that he's tone deaf or something, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't sound the same. There are, like I said, there are a few verses in the Megillah that we use to the tune of Eicha, but if it really sounds the same, then look, nobody's perfect. Only Hashem is perfect, and there are people who are tone deaf. They read well, and or whatever it is. But here I'm being recorded, and probably the person who reads in your shul is going to be watching this class or something, and I'm going to get myself in trouble. So I'm not going to make any more comments. But the Megillah Esther and Megillah's Eicha should sound quite different, except for those few verses.
There were in other communities, they also sing Elachadoji to the tune of Elitzion.
Yes.
But I mean, we don't do it, but it seems like other communities are more mournful on Shabbos than we are.
Yeah, there are some communities who either don't sing Lechadodi at all during the 9 days, or they use a different tune. And again, in Hasidic circles, we don't really do that so much. It's yes, we have to tone down on certain things, but as we said last week, we're minimizing our joy. We're not becoming suicidally depressed.
That's the basic difference. The Megillah has an energy to it. And there's a real energy to it. Eicha is just the opposite. The sentence we say in the Megillah, V'hamelech v'haman yoshvu lishtos v'ha'ir shushan nahavocha. The very big difference between the two.
Well, again, it should be, but again, not everyone is able to put expression when they read and different things. So this is, we made the point, but don't want to harp on it because I don't want to put anyone down again. Every one of us has different things that we're better at and certain things that we, certain things
Not
that we're
putting down, they can learn.
True. Yeah. So, what do we have? So we have the, all right. So Erev Tisha B'Av. Now, Erev Tisha B'Av this year is going to be different because most of what we're going to learn is when Erev Tisha B'Av falls out on a weekday. This year, well, technically, Erev Tisha B'Av does fall on a weekday, a Friday, and Tisha B'Av is Shabbos, not this Shabbos, but the next one. But as Shabbos overrules the Tisha B'Av, the fast is pushed over to Sunday. So for practical, so even though Tisha B'Av is Shabbos and it's the 10th of Av, that's the Sunday, but Erev the fast is going to be Shabbos. So it's going to be a little bit different. We'll see at the end of the chapter how it's a little bit different, but it's good to know what we're meant to do in the various things. So number one, a bris or a pigeon, a ben. So they fall out on Tisha B'Av. We have to make the suda, the meal, before noon. Now the pigeon and ben we're not doing on Shabbos, and the bris, it could be a little bit afternoon on Shabbos. But if it's a regular weekday. Number two, on Erev Tisha B'Av, we don't go for strolls, for a little, in other words, Tisha B'Av itself and Erev Tisha B'Av we're going to see particularly in the afternoon, where, again, thank God we're not literally mourners, but we're taking on certain customs of mourning. So if you need to go somewhere, you can go somewhere. And if the way to get there is to walk, you're allowed to walk. But, sometimes we just go for a nice stroll, little walk in the park for fun. Or we just go out, get some fresh air for fun. Now, there are some people who need to do it for exercise for their health. That's a little bit different. We'll come to that shortly. Now we're speaking about someone just going to a walk for enjoyment. So forget Tisha B'Av itself. Even Erev Tisha B'Av, we don't do this. Now, this year is no problem because it's Shabbos. Shabbos, we're allowed to go for a walk. Enjoy Shabbos. Also in the afternoon, we don't learn, we don't study Torah. I mean, there are some exceptions. So let's just let's talk about Tisha B'Av itself. Now, generally, when we study Torah, it gives us pleasure. So Tisha B'Av, we don't study. What we do study is we might study the book of Jeremiah about the prophecies of the destruction. We might study parts of the Talmud that tell us about the destruction, because those parts of Torah, because of the tragedy that we're learning about, don't give us that same joy. There are some communities that the custom is on Tisha B'Av, they study the laws of mourning. The reason for this is twofold. Number one is that I don't think anyone enjoys the laws of mourning, so it's a part of Torah that doesn't give you pleasure. And then number two, we should never know from such things, but the way the world currently operates until Mashiach comes is people pass away and people become mourners. And unfortunately, what often happens is a person becomes a mourner without, often without much notice. Not always, but often without much notice. And they don't have time or the headspace. If they do have some notice, they don't have the headspace to study the laws of mourning because, they're distracted, they're grieving, they're worried, whatever happens to be. So what happens is many communities have a custom that on Tisha B'Av, people study the laws of mourning. So A, it's something you're allowed to study on Tisha B'Av. And B, when if God forbid a person comes to a situation where they become a mourner, they're already familiar with what they can and can't do and how to do and various things. It's not like an overwhelming experience trying to learn these laws when they're trying to grieve. So things like that. So this not only applies on Tisha B'Av itself, but even Erev Tisha B'Av, the day before, from noon onwards. Now again, it's going to be Shabbos, and different communities have different customs, but many communities we still will say Torah, will teach Torah even in the afternoon when it's Shabbos. Number
Rabbi,
three.
can I ask you a quick question? But we're still going to fast, are we not?
We're going to fast on the Sunday.
Right.
Right, so
Okay.
Tisha B'Av, the
Right.
9th of Av is actually Shabbos.
Right.
The Shabbos overrules the fast, and the fast being pushed off till Sunday. Now, hopefully we won't. Hopefully Mashiach's going to come before then, and we'll have a Beis Mikdash, and it's already being pushed off a day, so let's let it get pushed off permanently. But if, God forbid, we're still in the same situation we are now, then we will fast on Sunday. Well, actually Saturday night, right? So from sunset, not nightfalls, not when Shabbos ends, but sunset. From sunset on Shabbos day, we will start the fast. And wherever you live, that'll be a slightly different time. So just check what time that is in your community. Now, this year, should say, so it's not this week, it's the following Shabbos, we'll have our regular third Shabbos meal. Now, we'll make it earlier because normally we make the Shabbos meal, most shuls, you say the afternoon service, afternoon prayers, and then we wash for the meal, and it's right before sunset. And we'll keep eating our meal, a Shabbos meal, till Shabbos ends. Then we bench, and then we say Maariv, the evening service. So that's what we do in a normal week. This year, so not the Shabbos, the one after, we can't do that. We're going to have it early because we need to finish by sunset. Instead of starting right before sunset, we need to finish sunset. So we're going to have it earlier, but other than having our third Shabbos meal earlier, it's going to be a regular Shabbos meal. We're going to wash, we'll have our fish, whatever you normally have at your third Shabbos meal. Dips, whatever happens to be. That's because it's Shabbos. On a regular year, so number 3, so chapter 123, number 3, in a regular year when it's a weekday, so we have a Suda HaMifsekes. It means the cutoff meal, right? The last meal. Now, the way we do this is and again, not this year, but on most years when Tisha B'Av is a weekday, the day before we're going to have a big meal before Mincha, before the afternoon service. So we've got enough fuel to get us through to the end of the fast. And then we have the afternoon service. Then after the afternoon service, we have what's called the Suda HaMifsekes. It's the cutoff meal, the last meal. I don't want to call it the Last Supper, but we're having our last meal for Tisha B'Av. So we wash, we have bread. Many people have accustomed to have a bagel, right? Contrary to popular misconception, bagels are not new. They're hundreds and hundreds of years in Europe, right? So the idea is because it's round and mourners eat round food. And then we have an egg. Again, an egg is a typical mourner food. And we dunk the egg into ashes. And we sit on the floor and we eat that meal. But again, that's a regular year when Tisha B'Av is a weekday and Erev Tisha B'Av is a weekday. This year, of course, not this Shabbos, but the one after, Erev Tisha B'Av is a Shabbos, and therefore we're going to have our third Shabbos meal as usual, just a little bit earlier. Okay. Number 4. I'll mention it because it's very uncommon nowadays, but it used to be more common. There were people used to fast every Monday and Thursday. So if you have these people who fast Monday and Thursday, and let's say Tisha B'Av is a Tuesday. So if you're going to fast Monday, and then Monday sunset, Tisha B'Av starts, and you can't eat until after nightfall on Tuesday, you're fasting 2 days, that's going to be a little bit difficult. So a person is allowed to nullify his vow. You can go to a Rav or a Beis Din, he can nullify his vow. This is why in general, and first of all, I'm not suggesting that anyone takes on to fast Monday and Thursdays on a regular basis, but anything a person does take on in general should say bli neder, anything optional extras, so it should never have the power of a vow. Yes, Susan.
Okay, if you have issues, if you get a headache because you're fasting, are you allowed to take aspirin to get rid of the headache?
Okay, so let's just mention, we spoke a little bit about this the previous fast, but Tisha B'Av was a little bit different. So any of the other fasts, so I'm not talking about Tisha, let's put
I'm
Yom
talking about
Kippur.
this. I'm
Yeah,
talking
so
about
let's put Yom Kippur separately,
right.
then Tisha B'Av, then all the others. All the others, if a person is unwell, whatever it is, they don't need to fast. Tisha B'Av, so it's a little more serious. So it's going to depend what is the problem. So if a person gets a headache, but they can go lie down. Again, now there's headaches and there's headaches. So we'll start off simple. A person feels weak, they don't feel so great, they have a headache. So Tisha B'Av, better go lie down. Lie down. If you have to sleep half the fast, it's not the ideal, but if that's what you need to do to get through Tisha B'Av, then that's what you need to do. That's step one. Now let's go to the other extreme before we talk about in the middle. The other extreme, let's say there's someone who's diabetic. Okay, they can't go 25 hours without eating. It's life-threatening. So obviously they need to eat. Now that doesn't mean you have to have a wedding feast, and you don't have to eat fancy, delicacies. But a person should eat small amounts and maybe a smaller amount more often. But again, it depends whether they have to have regular meals or it's better for them to have a little snack. In other words, if a person has a life-threatening medical situation, then obviously they have to eat. If it's a medical situation that's not life-threatening, so then obviously it depends how serious it is, and it depends what the options are. So if a person could swallow a capsule without water, for example, then that's fine, because the capsules anyway, it's covered, so you're not even tasting anything, and it's without water. Some people can't do that. Some people will gag, they have to have the water. So, I think I'm just saying general principles. I think a person who, if they have a situation, they should discuss with their rabbi their specific situation, because everyone's slightly different. What is the medical complication? How serious is it? How does it play out on them? What their options are for their medical condition. However, having said that, if someone needs, if halakha is going to tell them that they shouldn't be fasting, then they really shouldn't. When I was about 14, there was a man in the shul. The doctor told him under no circumstances he allowed to fast. I really don't know what the medical condition was. He was an older person who was told not to fast, and but he couldn't bring himself to eat on Yom Kippur, even though the rabbi told him based on the medical information he should fast. And the day after Yom Kippur he had a stroke. God forbid, we should never know from these things. But we have to understand. We had an example much earlier in the Shulchan Aruch. We're speaking about the Chassid Shaita, the pious fool, that there was a lady drowning. but she wasn't dressed. She'd been bathing in the river, and he didn't rescue her because it was immodest to take an undressed woman to grab her and pull her out of the water, right? So again, that's a made-up example. I hope that never really happened, but that's called the pious fool, the chassid shaitan. So although fasting on Tisha B'Av is very important, and if a person, the only way they can get through is to stay in bed the whole time and different things, they should do that. But there comes a certain line, and that line could be very different for different people. That's why I say a person has to discuss their specific situation with the rabbi. You can't say a general rule because everyone's health is so different. And it could also depend on the temperature where you are. Do you have air conditioning? There's lots of other factors. But if we are in a situation where a person shouldn't fast, then they really shouldn't fast, right? The same Torah that tells everyone else to fast is now telling them not to fast. So we have to bear that in mind. All right, number 5. Bein hashmashos, right? Remember that term from our Shabbos laws? That's the twilight period between sunset and nightfall, right? Between the sunset and nightfall. So both ends, we're going to consider that Tisha B'Av. So therefore, the fast is going to begin at sunset on Shabbos, not this Shabbos, the one after, but it's going to extend till nightfall on the Sunday. Now, even though we're going to mention it later, but I'll just mention it now, since we're speaking about the Bein Hashmashos period. So Shabbos, we're going to have regular Shabbos. We're going to make Kiddush Friday night, even though it's Tisha B'Av, but all over rules. And then it's going to come sunset on Shabbos, and we're going to stop eating and drinking. So then nightfall, we'll say Ma'ariv, the evening service, with the mini Havdalah that we say in the Amidah, but we can't make the regular Havdalah, right? Because the regular Havdalah is made on a cup of wine, and we can't drink wine, and you can't make a blessing on the wine if you're going to drink it. So we do say the phrase Baruch HaMavdil Ben Kodesh L'chol, and that just reminded me, David, I apologize. You asked me to find out the source of where to say it 3 times. And I forgot about it, and now I've just mentioned it, and it's made me remember. So, B'li Neder, we're going to look into and get back to you, and I apologize and to do it till now, my public admission. But we say Baruch HaMavdil Ben Kodesh L'chol, and then we're going to keep the whole Tisha B'Av, and when Tisha B'Av is finished on Sunday night, then we're going to make Havdalah and drink the wine. So, as we mentioned, if there was a reason, let's say there was no wine, or a person was in prison or something, God forbid, or they were stuck somewhere, till Tuesday you can make Havdalah, till Tuesday evening.
Is there Suda Shlishit on Shabbat?
So there is, but it's going to be earlier because we need to finish before sunset. Yeah.
You always finish before sunset, then we do.
So you normally finish before nightfall. Well, again, every shul is different. I don't know what you do in your shul, but most shuls, what they do is they start just before sunset, and they have it during the twilight period, and they end it at nightfall.
Oh.
Right. So here we need to finish at Shkia at sunset.
Before
So
sunset.
yeah. So it's the regular meal, just a bit earlier. Okay. Now, Bein Hashmashos, one of the things we can't do on Tisha B'Av is we don't wear leather shoes. We don't wear proper shoes. I mean, what it really meant is we don't wear shoes because they only had leather shoes. Today we're quite lenient with other shoes, let's say like Crocs or even sneakers that are not leather, the vinyl and different things. Even though technically, I guess they're proper shoes. Most people are quite lenient and allow those. Look, there are some people who just wear socks on Tisha B'Av. I'm not suggesting you do that, particularly if you're going outside, and out in the streets, it can be broken glass, in some places it can be syringes and different things, God forbid. So you don't want to step on these things. So wear the Crocs and the sneakers and different things. But we don't wear proper shoes. So that means even from sunset. However, this year, because it's Shabbos, we can keep our shoes on until nightfall. So different shuls will do different things. What we do in our shul is we have mincha early. We have our third Shabbos meal early. And then people go home. And instead of Mariv, the evening service, being right after Shabbos ends, like a normal Shabbos, we have it about 20 minutes afterwards. And that gives people a chance to take off Shabbos clothes, take off their proper shoes, and to get back to shul. They can even drive, because it said Baruch HaMavdim B'Chodesh Chol, and come for the Tisha B'Av evening service. Right, but I guess different places will do what works with their crowd. What happens. So that is the day before Tisha B'Av in a nutshell. Any questions? Okay. Now the chapter on Tisha B'Av, we're going to skip a chapter now. The chapter of Tisha B'Av we'll do next week, God willing. I'm going to skip the chapter 125, which is the laws when Tisha B'Av falls on Shabbos or Sunday, like this year. Now, some of these things we said already. Some of these things we said already in our discussion, but we'll say it again as it comes up. So chapter 125. So number one, Tisha B'Av that falls out on a Sunday, or if it's Shabbos but gets pushed off to a Sunday like this year. Either way, it's being observed on a Sunday. Then on Shabbos, which is Tisha B'Av technically, it's 9th of Av technically, we can eat meat and drink wine. Right? So we're allowed to eat meat, we're allowed to drink wine on the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av. Even the third meal, as we said, which is after Mincha, we can have everything, meat, wine if you want. He says here, but you don't have a meal together with all your friends. There are other authorities who rule that if every week you have, let's say, for example, Shabbos Shudas, the third Shabbos meal in the shul, everyone together, then you can also have this week. So some people do, some people don't. It's not a problem. As we said, if there's a bris, we have the meal for the bris before Mincha. And you can even make a mezuman, the invitation to bench, which normally on Erev Tisha B'Av you don't do, on the day before you don't do, in the afternoon. But here at Shabbos, you're allowed to, no problems. However, we have to stop before sunset. There's no more eating or drinking or washing. And we don't take off our leather shoes until Baruch Hu, until Mariv, to the evening service. If the person's going to be the chazan, he'll take them off before Baruch Hu if you're doing it right after, so he doesn't get confused where he's up to. Okay, so that was the eating. We mentioned that before. Again, any questions, please stop. I'm trying to go through a little bit quickly because there's only 10 minutes left, plus next week, and lots to do. But if I'm going too quickly and not explaining well enough, please stop me. So number two, now the Friday nights. If it's Tisha B'Av like this year, so this year the 9th of Av actually is Shabbos. Happens to be that the fast is being postponed to the Sunday. but the 9th of Av is actually Shabbos. Now, a real mourner, let's talk about a real mourner for a moment. God forbid we should know from these things. There's no public mourning on Shabbos. So they wear the Shabbos clothes, various things. However, private mourning, for example, marital relations, they don't do. These things that are in privacy. So when it's like this year, the Tisha B'Av actually falls out on Shabbos and just being postponed, we should not have marital relations on that Shabbos unless that's the mikveh night. Then that overrules. Now, on Shabbos, number 3, we're going to say Av HaRachamim. Now, I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with the different parts of the service, but Av HaRachamim is a prayer that we say after the Torah reading, before Musaf, that was it's primarily for the Jewish martyrs. Became very popular after the Crusades, the period of the Crusades, and it's for martyrs. So on a day that if it was a weekday, we wouldn't say Tachlon. It's a bit of a joyous day. We don't normally say Av HaRachamim. Now Tisha B'Av, we don't say Tachlon. It's in a certain respect joyous. Now, on the other hand, of course, you know it's the saddest day in the Jewish calendar. So how is it joyous? So let's say, there's a person who has a surgery, a very horrible, painful, unpleasant surgery, God forbid. Now, while they're undergoing the surgery, it's the most horrible experience they ever had in their life. But this surgery saved their life. Without it, God forbid, who knows? So after they recover, they're very happy they had the surgery, even though while they're experiencing it, it was horrible. But after the fact, they're very happy. So Tisha B'Av, we've had these terrible tragedies, but ultimately, we're going to see how it was all for the best. All for the best. I mean, it was part of the process of Mashiach coming. And so to speak, it was an unpleasant experience that ultimately led to a positive outcome. Now, during the surgery, no one can understand how, well, they might know they're going to be saved, but they're not thinking about that. So while we're unfortunately having problems in exile, we're not really understanding how it's going to be joyous in the future. But when it happens, we'll look back and say, oh, that's why that had to happen. That was so this can fall into place. And that's why this had to happen. It's so we treat it like a semi-joyous day, like a semi-yontif, even though it's a terrible day. But nevertheless, we say Av HaRachamim on Shabbos. We can mention, if it's a yard side or something, we say Kal Malei Rachamim, a special prayer for the souls of the deceased, which again we don't normally do on a semi-yontif day. But Mincha, we don't say Tzid Koscha, which reminds us of 3 great tzaddikim that passed away. Because that's already getting into the Tisha B'Av. We're almost there. Okay, number 4. Now, Tisha B'Av that falls out on Shabbos, there are those who are strict and they don't even learn the things that you don't learn on a Tisha B'Av weekday afternoon. However, there are others who do. And, I think we can rule leniently and learn more Torah. That's number 5. Before Mariv, most people don't say Lamed Seich Meginos, but certain people say this psalm, so we don't say that. We also don't say V'hinoim Vata Kodesh, because this is all about setting up the Mishkan, and there is no Mishkan. There's no base of Mikdash, it's destroyed. So we don't say that. Or V'yitin L'chol. So these prayers that people say. Now, so Shabbos, when is normal? We had our third Shabbos meal earlier. We've now said Mariv. Next week, God willing, we'll speak about what we do at the Mariv, how we read the book of Eicha, we sit on the floor, different things. But that's over. Now, we said we can't make Havdalah, but we know besides the Havdalah, there's other things we do. There's a bracha on a candle, there's a bracha on spices, a blessing made on spices. So what about those things? Those things we can't do on Sunday. So what happens there? So when it's dark, after nightfall, so we look at a candle and we make the bracha Borem Ha'esh. So on Saturday night, even though we're not making Havdalah, we do make the blessing on the candle. And in the Shemona Esrei, the Middah, our silent prayer, we say the Atachon Antonu, we say the mini Havdalah. But we don't say the regular Havdalah until Sunday night. And we also on Sunday night, we don't make a bracha on the spices, and we don't make a bracha on the candle on Sunday night, even if we didn't happen to do it on Saturday night. Okay, so practically speaking, what we do, if you happen to see a candle, you make a bracha on the candle on Saturday night. We don't say a bracha on the spices, because the spices is to make us feel a bit better after Shabbos is finished. Well, here we're not trying to feel better. We're trying to get into the Tisha B'Av mood. And then on Sunday night, we're going to make the Havdalah on the cup. Now, since we're not making Havdalah, you have to make sure not to do any malachas, not to do anything of the forbidden until we said Baruch Hamavda ben Kodesh L'chol. That's ideally. Right. Number 7. If Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbos, like it does this year, and gets pushed off the Sunday, now the night after the fast, we don't eat meat and wine still, but you can the next day. So let me explain this, go back a step. Let's say Tisha B'Av fell out on a Tuesday, or any other day of the week. Not this year, but another year, falls out on a weekday. But even though the fast finishes Tuesday night, we started Monday evening, we fasted until Tuesday night, and we can eat Tuesday night when the fast is finished, but we don't go back to eating meat or drinking wine until midday on Wednesday, midday the next day. Why? Because although the base of Mikdash was set on fire on Tisha B'Av, and it started to burn on Tisha B'Av, it burned all through the night until midday the next day. So even though we're not fasting anymore, it'd be too difficult to fast 36 hours. But we're not going to start having meat and wine and whole parties while the base Mikdash is burning. But this year, the 9th of Av is actually Shabbos. It's getting pushed off to the 10th. So by the time we finish Tisha B'Av, we're already past the midday of the next day. By the time we finish. So we don't need to avoid meat and wine the next day, but we still have a custom that night not to have meat and wine after the fast. All right. Now, if there's a bris, so again, the situation we're speaking about is like this year, the 9th of Av falls out on the Shabbos, and we observe the fasting of Tisha B'Av on Sunday. Now there's a bris on this Sunday. So they make Havdalah on wine after the midday, and they wash just the father or the parents and the moil and the sandik. If that happens. Anyway, if you have a child and the bris 8th day falls out on a postponed Tisha B'Av, we'll discuss the laws in more detail then. So next week we're going to go back one chapter and do the actual laws of Tisha B'Av. So again, this Shabbos is fine as usual, although the 9 days start tonight. And we'll learn next Thursday, and then that Shabbos after that is going to be the 9th of Av, and we'll observe Tisha B'Av on the Sunday. Now next week we're going to have a few more classes together, God willing. We're taking some of Rabbi Smith's classes, so we'll learn some Talmud, some Gemara together, and then we'll also have another afternoon or two, and we'll look at the book of Eicha, which is the book that we read, the Megillah that we read on Tisha B'Av. All right, any questions before we finish up?
Beautiful, thank you.
Stay safe, everybody. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Thank you,
Have a-
Rabbi.
Thank
Have
you.
a
Good to see
Yasher
you.
wonderful
Koach.
Shabbos,
Bye-bye.
wonderful week, healthy week.
Have a good
Shabbos.
Shabbos.
All right.
You too. Bye-bye.